feedback that you might have, and that's really what we're looking forward to through the course of this presentation.
Great. So to start off, just like to acknowledge that today we're presenting from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam Nation. And I acknowledge that there's people attending throughout the province in similar Indigenous lands, which we're all very grateful to work with and play in. Now, in terms of innovation UBC, as I alluded to, it is a reorganization of previously the University Industry Liaison Office and entrepreneurship at UBC. So really, Innovation UBC is an umbrella over 4 units. The first is sponsored research. And sponsored research is when you, the UBC investigator, wants to do research with industry, government, or not-for-profits. We will help negotiate and put that contract in place. The contract will take care of issues like confidentiality, intellectual property, and publication. And every year we complete about 2,500 different contracts in this space, worth a total value of about $190 million. The second group is entrepreneurship and venture building. This speaks to the historical success of UBC in forming spin-off companies that take research discoveries and translate them into products that are impactful in the world. And certainly for UBC, the greatest path of success for that has been through spin-off companies that license UBC IP. The entrepreneurship group, as we'll get into in a moment, has a dedicated series of courses and mentorship and guidance with entrepreneurs and residents that help UBC spin-off companies become successful, develop products, and obtain financing. There's then inventions and licensing, which traditionally is technology transfer. And this is the evaluation of intellectual property that is discovered from research, looking at competitors, freedom to operate. Is a patent possible? Because many times, in order to form a spin-off company, you need a good patent position. Every year, we evaluate about 170 different opportunities for intellectual property, and we actually move forward and patent about half of those. And then lastly, partnerships. Partnerships is somewhat adjacent to our other 3, but they're almost the inverse of sponsored research, where if an industry partner comes to university, has no idea where to start or how to engage in order to answer a particular problem, the partnerships group will work with them to identify researchers or clusters that are interested in sponsored research with that partner to solve their particular problem. Next slide.
Yeah, and so when we, as JP said, when we had the opportunity to integrate the units and be formed under the newly named Innovation UBC, one of the things that we did in 2024 was to take a moment and ensure that we heard from the researchers that we support. So at that time, we put together a survey for the UBC researcher community, and that included, faculty, staff, graduate students. We tried to have it distributed as widely as possible. In the case of the Faculty of Medicine, Dr. Sophia Frangu, Associate Dean of Research, helped us distribute it to members of your community. And in fact, as you can see from the figure there on the right, the Faculty of Medicine responded. Over 40% of the respondees were actually from the Faculty of Medicine. And that has helped us get a sense of like a pulse check about how people are experiencing the services from the former UILO and entrepreneurship at UBC, now Innovation UBC. And with the feedback that we received from the researchers across campus, there was over 200 responses. People shared, I would say, in great detail about experiences that they have had utilizing the services, whether that be tech transfer, sponsored research, or entrepreneurship. And we heard lots of opportunities to improve our services, which was the intention of the survey, to get a sense of like what people are actually experiencing and how we can then use this moment to design better opportunities. So with that, my colleague Smruti is going to share with you a little bit about what we heard. I'm happy to pause here if anyone had any thoughts or feedback. It could have been that you may receive that survey yourself, or you may have experiences here that we can talk about. Otherwise, we'll allow Smruti to go through the results. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to ask a quick question. I apologize if I missed this, but the survey respondents here, are these all like UBC faculty, or are these how much is clinical faculty? Because clinical faculty is not UBC employed.
Yes, we did hear from clinical faculty. We can actually, if you're interested as a follow-up, we could do a bit of a breakdown, but we heard from clinicians because of course with the Faculty of Medicine, that's a unique aspect in terms of how faculty members and researchers access Innovation UBC services. So we did have some follow-up meetings with respondents as well. If anyone wanted to share further, Smruti and I did some further discovery meetings with them. So we did hear from some clinicians, yes.
Great, thanks.
All right, sponsored research. So sponsored research is certainly a flow of activity. And it starts with a proposal development in which an industry partner has identified a series of work and deliverable and budget is established. This is then submitted to the sponsored research group in Innovation UBC. And along with an RPIF form, because every university loves a good form. And with that, we begin contacting the sponsor, putting in place an agreement. Oftentimes, sponsors will want to work with their own agreement template. Sometimes they'll work with ours. And we go through a process of iteration to bring this to a conclusion and what we hope is a win-win scenario. Now, as part of the feedback, one of the things we heard from people is, faster, quicker, less friction, please, less iterations. And certainly we've put a lot of effort into redefining our agreements. And we see now where previously the complex agreements like a collaborative research agreement with industry used to take around 7 to 8 months. And now with the new templates and the desire to keep iteration as low as possible, we're down under 3 months for these complex agreements. So we go through this series of negotiation, and then we move to agreement execution. And then there's a handoff to research finance, who creates your project account, and then the research is undertaken. Lastly, we may on occasion have to deal with amendments. Perhaps it took too long. Maybe the sponsor is incredibly impressed and wants to expand the scope and the budget. And these are all things that we'll take care of and then again adjust the scope of the budget and the research account.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about what we've been up to ever since the reorganization and introduction of Innovation UBC, specifically with some of the feedback that Andrea mentioned we collected at that sort of critical juncture, especially with the sponsored research group. A lot of the feedback we heard from the research community was a need to improve wayfinding and access to information and resources. For example, we heard many researchers, clinician researchers, faculty members talk about the idea that it often feels like a little bit of a black box. It's, with the different units, UBC research service units working together, it's a little challenging to figure out, when do I go to the health authority? When do I go to the Office of Research Services versus approach our team at Innovation UBC? We also heard a desire for improved website resources, things like flowcharts, how-to guides, that just make accessing all of this information a lot easier. So some of the things that we've been working on over the last year and a half is really incorporating and addressing some of this feedback we received. So what you see on the screen now is a couple of the initiatives that we've worked on. For example, we undertook an extensive discovery process with our website, where we actually had 10 different case studies based on actual interactions and requests that we'd received from researchers. And then we had somebody go through that experience as if they were a researcher to identify gaps and things we could improve. And the flow chart that you see on the screen is a direct output of implementing some of that feedback. We also put together how-to video guides. So we've recently launched a new video resource on how to put together an RPIF, especially when it's submitted to the sponsored research groups, because we identified, researchers would spend a lot of time, care, and effort in filling these forms out, maybe only to find out that they might have misinterpreted or missed out some critical information that leads to unnecessary project delays along the way. And so these are some video resources, visual resources that we've introduced. Our intention is to continue to build on the feedback we received through that survey process. The sort of next thing we're trying to tackle is researchers identifying that, typically any one project really touches the health authority and the Office of Research Services and the sponsored research group. And it's kind of difficult to understand what the starting point is. So in terms of our upcoming priorities, those are the resources we're trying to build out just to help we find through this process. We also introduced to address the idea of the process feeling a little bit like a black box. Once my request goes in, I'm not sure what status my agreement or my relationship or collaboration with this external party, where it's at. And so what we've recently launched is the ability to track the live status of any agreement that our office is currently processing on Sophia. And this will allow researchers to simply log in with their CWL and be able to see at what stage these different agreements might be at, just to improve that transparency that we heard researchers are really wanting through that feedback process. The other thing that we heard through the feedback process that JP alluded to was the idea of having more responsive and timely engagements between UBC researchers and our research sponsors. And so internally, what we've done over the last few months is to institute a service goal of a 2 business day response time. Often the kinds of things that our team is dealing with is complex negotiations and agreements. So it's hard to resolve or come to a resolution within 2 business days. We definitely uphold the importance of making sure that everyone involved in the process feels that the process is transparent enough and is receiving constant updates, so researchers don't feel the need to follow up with our office. And so we've instituted this 2 business day response time. And as JP mentioned, the idea of introducing more risk-adjusted sponsored research agreements just to accelerate that process of project launch. Not sure if you wanted to add anything else to that.
No, but maybe there'll be some questions later we can dive into. All right, inventions and licensing. So again, there is a lot of intellectual property that's incredibly valuable to society that's developed at UBC, and the tech transfer group, the inventions and licensing group at Innovation UBC is responsible for evaluating that and determining if there is an opportunity. Patenting is incredibly expensive, and product development is expensive. So a lot of times for companies to be successful, they want to see a patent, and they want to see the wrapper behind the patent that justifies its existence. And that's in fact what we do. So step 1 is an invention disclosure. We've now modified that. So instead of a dry paper form, it's a very simple submission that's available online through our website. And really what is the most valuable thing for us is as much detail as possible. And that's typically in a journal article draft. So even if it's early stage, something like that really allows us to dig deep and find competitors, find other patents that may overlap, or ask really intensive questions that demonstrate that we have a clear path to a patent. We assess the market opportunity. This includes the size of the market, the competition, what advantages the invention might have over existing. And then when all that checks out, we move forward to patent. Again, we patent about half of the disclosures that come through. And the reason why we don't patent the other half, it isn't really from a value proposition. It's really because we quickly find prior art, stuff in the public domain that reads directly on the invention. And when there's no novelty, we really are not in a position to prosecute a patent and get issued claims. So then with the patent in place, we begin the process of marketing and licensing, identifying leads, and then really approaching those leads and describing the invention to them and how we think it might fit into their product development and their offerings. But really the gold star for us, and when we're doubling down on, is the creation of spin-off companies. And so tech transfer together with entrepreneurship it's trying to take what has been, 10 spin-off companies per year and to take it to 20 to 25. In order to make that a simpler process, the gain feedback we've heard is we've developed an express license agreement, which we will be talking about in just in a minute.
And so just talking about some of what we heard from the research community, as we did for sponsored research, similarly for the inventions and licensing or tech transfer team, we understood that researchers were looking for improved wayfinding and access to information and resources. Within this, we specifically heard that there's some faculties or departments that engage very frequently with inventions and licensing activities. And so they might be more aware of things like UBC policies, how to work with our office, just general information about how intellectual property works, whereas other departments or faculties may not be as aware and have as much exposure. And so to really be able to address this and level the playing field across UBC's campus as well as other sites, what we've very intentionally done is to increase the sort of workshops that we deliver for faculty, PhD candidates, or graduate trainees, just to understand how intellectual property works. So right from topics like what do you need to know before you publish, and what potential impacts could that have for patenting activity or protection activity in the future, all the way through to understanding what UBC's policy is on intellectual property and how researchers can work with our office to navigate that. So if you or anyone from your lab or your department might be interested in learning more about intellectual property, we encourage you to reach out to us. And we may, come and facilitate or curate lunch and learns or workshops specifically for your needs.
If I may just add to that, back to your question, Jeff, earlier about sort of clinician researchers and faculty members. When we did our outreach and heard from folks at the hospitals, many times they said, one of the things that we experience is just like there's so much going on, our schedules are so busy, but that we're not able to kind of take advantage of some of the supports that exist because we're out here and you're over there at UBC at Point Grey. So one of the efforts that we do want to make to Smruti's request is if you are, potentially interested in some of these topics, then we can be flexible and come to you, so that the ease of access for you and your colleagues that are extremely busy in the hospitals, we could kind of help alleviate some of that about, maybe not having time.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly we've seen some really great indications that some of these more flexible outreaches are helping with having increased participation from clinicians in our venture programs as well.
I think the specific phrase we heard from this clinician researcher was a sense of fear of missing out, physically not being located on UBC's Point Grey campus, just not being aware of what sort of supports and resources are available and how can those be accessed. And so we're very sort of open and happy to come to hospital sites and conduct some of these workshops and lunch and learns just to address that sort of sentiment.
Yeah, so the express license. So we need to match up our enthusiasm for spin-off companies with sort of the ease of getting those transactions done for the companies and their founders themselves. So historically, it's been a tremendous friction point between the university administration, which I guess is us, and the founder scientists who want to form a company. In fact, on average, we would see the license negotiation would take about 14 months. So in order to address that, we developed an express license agreement. And we did this in consultation with the top 20 legal groups across Canada and venture capital and angel community to make sure that we were, putting forth terms that were fair and reasonable, not only business and financial terms, but also the legal terms that are within the license contract itself. And this was a huge success in terms of an engagement exercise to deal with the larger community and resulted in an express license agreement. Now, the financial terms for patented technology in an express license agreement is a 5% of the founder's equity, anti-dilution to 2 million. Essentially, that means that at the founding stage of the company, you ends up with 8% of the proceeds or of the equity, and a 2% royalty on sales of a patented product. There's also a software version with a lower dilution rate, but with no royalty at all. And so we launched this express license agreement last spring. And so recall that I mentioned that we normally do 8 to 10 spin-off companies per year. And through Q3 of this year, we've already completed 19 spin-off companies, with the vast majority of those being express license agreement. So while, you know, I think we're getting some feedback, the feedback I should say is overwhelmingly positive with the founders in terms of the structure and the ease at which this is put in place. There is still some debate. You know, I understand from a company point of view, they would rather have the technology for free, and we can always have a debate and a negotiation about that. But I think the bottom line is that the express license is accepted broadly in the community and nationally by professionals. And in fact, we're now seeing the value of that through this incredible sort of flurry of spin-off company activity.
And I think what's interesting amongst all the express license agreements that we've processed is many of them are from the Faculty of Medicine. So it's encouraging to see the kind of activity that's happening from medicine specifically with these improvements and others.
Right. So entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is focused on spin-off companies. Spin-off companies are companies that are formed based on UBC research. And so why that focus? We did an exercise to look at the impact of our spin-off companies in the world. And I was actually stunned looking through the public data and recording it, that over the past 5 years, UBC spin-off companies have raised $5 billion in private capital and public market capital and grants directly from governments. And 91% of those companies are still in Canada, 88% of those are still in BC. So we're seeing, you know, external forces really value the technology developed at UBC highly. And we see massive investment that is really creating jobs and opportunities in the province. So the concept of really trying to focus and make these companies successful, mitigate risk in early stage is definitely a worthwhile activity, and that's what entrepreneurship does. So there's a lot of outreach at first. Andrea and Smruti are very key in that, and we want to identify both opportunities and people who have that sort of entrepreneurial spark in their eye. But we also want to identify, you know, mentors in the community who are interested in working with companies that are coming out of UBC. We then move into the Venture Founder Program, which is really education. And over a 4-month period, you know, these founder groups could be graduate students, could be undergrads. You know, I'd say in about 60% of the cases, the faculty member is involved as well. And it's a very intensive learning experience. They give you the ABCs of company formation and what's expected. And I think it's an incredibly valuable exercise. I encourage anyone to really attend these types of training activities, because even if you don't go on to form a company, these lessons you will carry through your life and they will be beneficial. I think at the end of Venture Founder, you're going to know, am I an entrepreneur? Do I want to form a company? Or you could say safely that actually, I don't think this is for me. So the ones who do have the spark still, they would move on to Venture Builder, which is a much longer, more intensive program where 1 or 2 entrepreneurs and residents are paid by Innovation UBC, by the university, to work with you as a founder group to focus on product development, customer engagement, all towards removing risk so that the company can be financed and grow within the BC community. Around our traditional offerings are also a pan-national lab to market program that's funded by NSERC in conjunction with a lot of other partner institutions. And we have found that the lab to market offerings are very complementary to what we have on tap. They fit within the spaces and really just give a lot of value, especially to undergrad, graduate students and postdocs who want to explore commercialization of the technology.
Yeah, and I would just add in terms of the sort of the overview of the types of potential ways to engage if you are interested in translating your invention or your improvement in practice We've, as I mentioned, had an increasing sort of interest from members of the Faculty of Medicine. In our current cohort, our venture founder cohort, actually 25% of the participants in a cohort of 12 to 15 ventures is from the Faculty of Medicine. We're seeing faculty members participate with research associates or students, graduate students or postdocs as a way of addressing that. How do I find the time to kind of, do the work I as a physician or as a researcher and, advance this potential discovery or product or service that can benefit patients' lives. But we are finding that there is a balance, and we've tried to develop, as JP mentioned, a suite of services that are flexible for people that have differing levels of capacity and at different stages of development, where they can plug into the community and receive different types of support. One thing that often arises in the case of faculty-led in ventures is that they may start leading the venture, but they may actually be building out their team as they get more and more engaged with the wider community. We have a series of over 200 industry mentors, and often teams will form based on trust relationships at the early stage with mentors that then may go on to assist the teams building out down the road. And what we hear particularly from our life sciences ventures, our ventures that are health oriented, whether that's medtech or diagnostics, is that the motivating force for them is that they want to see these benefits help patients and improve people's lives. And so that's one thing that we're particularly excited about, seeing more and more participation from the Faculty of Medicine.
In terms of the feedback that we heard from researchers about entrepreneurship, our key takeaway was that some faculties and departments are very well aware about entrepreneurship and the kind of services we provide. From others, we heard, well, who are you and how can you help me? I'm not really sure what entrepreneurship looks like in my specific domain or my area of expertise, but I'm curious to learn more. And so to address some of this curiosity, we would love to offer curated entrepreneurship workshops and lunch and learns for different levels of exposure. We understand that for some faculty members, they may be interested in this. For others, it might be a great sort of learning opportunity for their labs, their graduate students, and their postdocs. And so we're happy to facilitate curated entrepreneurship workshops, lunch and learns, bringing together a panel of scientists turned entrepreneurs from our venture portfolio to sort of share their lessons on what might have ignited that spark and that curiosity for entrepreneurship, what keeps them going, what are certain challenges they face. On the previous slide, you saw the different programs that we offer. There are quite a few of them. And sometimes we've found that researchers aren't really sure what is the right starting point for me based on where I am in my venture building or entrepreneurship journey. And so Lynn Cooley, our senior program manager of operations, offers pathway consulting conversations. So anyone at any stage of their entrepreneurial journey can kind of reach out, learn more, and help wayfind and really figure out what is the appropriate next step based on where they are at in their journey. So these are services that we offer, and we do want to make sure, of course, that more faculty members, graduate students, and folks in the research community can access and take advantage of these supports and services.
Yeah, and then in terms of just general questions that you may have, one of the sort of results of our survey, and we've been going in just as we're doing today into departmental meetings so that we can. Oh, sorry. One moment.
It's disconnected.
Okay,
I'm disconnected. Yep, I think we're.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear us now. I think there was a little bit of a glitch with UBC Secure. But as I was mentioning, we wanted to ensure that we have continual touch points. Some of the things that we did hear from researchers were very helpful in us being able to define ways that we can look at all aspects of the way that we do our work and remove some of the frustrating potential barriers, obstacles, unknowns that exist, because a lot of the work that is done in this space involves a great deal of complexity. And sometimes we heard from researchers that it's not clear which front door to knock at, like, is it CIHR, is it the hospital, is it UBC, which unit of UBC? So one of the things that Smruti and I are doing is trying to get a sense of like being a bit more about a wide open front door, so that we can reduce that triage time in the sense it takes to, wayfind and get the right answer to your questions. So in addition to the pathway consulting that Smruti just mentioned, we also have just open office hours for us. And you're welcome to just like book some time to, if you have a question that you're having a potential unknown or difficult time answering, that we could hopefully help you find an answer quicker. So feel free to follow up with us. We will share the slides after the meeting, and you'll be able to find us on the website and buy the slide deck links as well.
So I think that that wraps up our presentation. Hoping to some questions that we can answer or topics that need to be discussed.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Genevieve.
No, please. Thank you for the presentation. Jeff, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, again, along the lines of being clinical faculty, it says, at least in my employment agreement, and probably in a lot of others on the call, that, PHSA gets a cut of whatever innovation I develop under the auspices of this. How does that work in terms of innovation UBC? Do you guys co-develop? Do you work together? Do you fight for supremacy? How does that settle out?
Good question.
A cage match. No, well, there are established affiliation agreements between all the health authorities and university, because UBC faculty are working and conducting research at all of the different health authorities in the province. With clinical faculty, it's even more of a sort of gray area. So typically, the majority of clinical faculty are appointed really just for teaching only, and there is no research base. And so while, through the appointment, it says that clinical faculty will be bound by UBC policy, UBC has ownership of intellectual property. The reality of that is that, we certainly don't want to overreach. So if a clinical faculty has no grant funding, has no laboratory footprint to make an invention, UBC will certainly not make any claim on that invention. And it's likely in most of those cases that neither will the health authority, but that's on a case-by-case basis, maybe depending on the work. So we try to be, very pragmatic and rational and communicative about that. But I think it's underappreciated that we will sort of disclaim and provide letters, when appropriate, to clinical faculty about IP that they develop independently at the university. When it is a UBC faculty member who has a lot of grant funding and lab space and research space at a health authority, then in most of the cases, Innovation UBC would take care of the commercialization, patenting aspects of it. And if down the road in the future, UBC was to receive proceeds from that, the institutional share of those proceeds would accrue to the health authority and half would go to the university.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for John Paul, Andrea, or Smruti? We do have a lot of clinical faculty on this call, and the offer was out in terms of better connection with clinical faculty. I'm wondering if there's anything that would help the group that's on this call. Jeff?
I'll just keep talking if nobody else wants to. I'll just mention I'd never heard of Innovation UBC until this presentation. So, it may just be me, and maybe other people. We get tons of surveys. I tend to just discard them without really reading them. So I don't remember seeing a survey, but it may have come to me. But there may be a lot of people who, like us, like other people on this call, who don't really know anything about what you do and do there. So I kind of found this presentation was good, but it was sort of starting from a point past where my understanding was of what Innovation UBC is. Not to say that you didn't do a good job of kind of explaining that sort of thing, but the feedback from the from your survey really did make a lot of sense to me. But anyway, thank you for coming to this. It was very enlightening.
Thank you, Jeff.
And this might be, oh, I see there's another hand. Sorry, Jenny.
Mazzy, and then I think Jackie had a comment as well, or a question.
Sure. Thank you very much for coming and giving this presentation. Really helpful. My question is, where I am in St. Paul's Hospital, for example, we have Innovarium, where it provides some support in terms of innovation. I want to see if you guys are connected. Is there an overlap or different services? When should I go to Innovarium at St. Paul's, or when should I come to you guys, or both?
So the office at Providence, I would say in general is making investments that directly impact in a rapid fashion patient care. And so those initiatives are funded by PHSA, and so they want to take ownership of it. Now, in some cases, that's completely distinct from the clinician scientists UBC research. In many cases, there's a lot of background research, that was CIHR funded, that's contributing to that, in which case there would be sort of joint interest from both UBC and the hospital. And in some cases, it's something that was developed solely at UBC that PHSA or Providence Health has an interest in sort of bringing to their patients. So there's a broad spectrum. But what I guess everybody needs to know is that there's a real willingness and desire to work together to see impacts. So we figure this out, and then if somebody strongly wants to lead and invest, then the other person gets out of the way, but still wants to help and coordinate as much as possible. I'm sorry, and before I leave that, where Innovation UBC more focuses is on the IP that arises from grant funded research, right? So if you're working on a tri-agency grant and you have a discovery, then the understanding amongst all the health authorities typically would be Innovation UBC would get that disclosure and then would begin to work it up. And certainly with Providence, we would give them a heads up if we felt there was overlap and something that they needed to pay attention to, maybe because some of the inventors aren't UBC employees, or maybe because it has a direct relationship to rapid patient care improvements.
Thank you.
I would just quickly add that on the more community sort of level, with entrepreneurial initiatives, we've had a long-standing collaboration with Providence's innovation initiatives, including like Skunkworks, if you've heard of that, where there was a 2 or 3 day session on hacking wounds that brings members of the clinical community, patient advocacy groups, people who have specific expertise to work on that. So that's one more community sort of like level initiative that our entrepreneurship group has helped support Providence with via mentors or certain types of entrepreneurial expertise.
Jackie?
Thanks so much. I stepped in late and I was starting to multitask. So hi, JP and everyone. But the question I have relates to MTAs. Investigators who have been here for a long time may have that as collaborators move institutions. MTAs kind of need updating, checking, and refreshing. Who do we reach out to check in on that? Is the first question. And B, is this sort of your active database's intent as a way for us to keep up to date on these things, if I understood that correctly?
Yeah, certainly. So with our overarching Innovation UBC database, which is called Sophia, so now researchers can access all the agreements and the intellectual property and the goings on that are related to them directly, so they can get oversight. They can see, current active agreements. They can see ones that are expired. And so, yes, if you sign MTA, it's like, well, I'm still really using that and I need it. Then we could do an amendment. And so my colleague Nandita would be the one to do those amendments. I will say too that so we spent a lot of time focused on making industry collaborative research agreements more streamlined, more timely, less friction. And the next project in the coming couple months will actually be material transfer agreements, where we're going to be investing a lot of time and effort to bring the time to completion, to at least happen.
Right.
With some sort of new guidelines and protocols. So hopefully you'll see a lot of improvements and movement on that front as well.
Okay. And then maybe one other question, which just relates to the sort of political climate right now. There are, for example, in MS research, which I do, a number of new initiatives that are starting up to get like industrial co-sponsored grants to, do different types of research. Are you finding that things are changing with organizations, charitable or otherwise, in the US now in considering these types of endeavors, or do we just start everything eyes wide open? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I spent a lot of time thinking and reacting to it on occasion. So my observation is that UBC researchers, it's a minority of them, are experiencing impacts when it comes to U.S. government funding.
Yeah.
And so while they're in the minority, nonetheless, these impacts, significantly hamper their individual research base.
Yeah.
I find that the U.S. companies themselves tend to be business as usual, and so they recognize university as one of the top research universities in the world, with specialized knowledge, and they still want to engage at the numbers we've seen historically, if not actually growing.
Yeah.
I would say the not-for-profit sector as a whole is diminishing somewhat. There are some larger sort of Canadian foundations that are still prevalent, still funding a lot, but the not-for-profit foundation funding it's trending downwards somewhat, and trending upwards in terms of complexity, because I think they're faced with like, okay, how do we keep on retaining funds? How do we ever green? So now they're getting into a really complex revenue sharing agreement for IP that's not going to return anything
Right.
for 12 to 15 years. So that's a quick overview. Issues
Yeah.
on the government side, industry side seems to be business as usual.
Okay. So if we do have MTAs and agreements in place, the US federal government that we maybe haven't looked at in a little while, who do we reach out to kind of maybe partner up with one of you to say, okay, do you think it's business as usual, or should we look at revisiting some of the terms of this agreement now? Who would be the best person to direct that to?
So if you're looking for sort of strategic advice,
Yeah.
it would probably be myself, or I'm not sure if you have a tech transfer manager that
Okay.
you worked with in the past, like maybe Brad, I think is
Yeah.
responsible.
Okay. Perfect.
Really,
Thank you.
Brad would be an excellent person to talk to about that.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Thank you.
But thank you for your great question, Jacqueline. And one of the things that Smruti and I are trying to do is, because a lot of the types of questions you have are very contextual, and they're very big picture, as well as requiring a fair amount of detail. So in terms of like the expertise of someone like Brad or whoever who may be able to offer some sort of strategic insight, what we're trying to do is get a sense of like what types of questions are coming, what are the kind of patterns, what are the things that individuals are asking that we could then share more widely, because if you're asking this question, likely the case is many of your colleagues also want to know. And so it's really helpful to hear sort of directionally where there's gaps. And one of the aims of our team is to kind of help fill them by, is it possible to have just an info session, or what are the quick pieces that can be shared? We're working at more at departmental levels and with the associate deans of research to kind of say, hey, can you send this out to your faculty members? Here's an interesting update about something that may affect them. So thank you for surfacing that question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't think there's any more questions.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, I'd just love to share that, us coming in for the first time was just sort of with the intention of establishing this relationship. But we do hope that there's ongoing sort of contact between our office and this department. We came in with more of a broad overview as some of the members noted. If there's anything that you'd want us to particularly follow up on, so for example, if I don't really understand anything you said about IP or what that looks like, and we would love a more focused discussion around that, or would love a more focused discussion around sponsored research, we're very happy to come back. And so as you may sort of surface some needs and some questions, please do keep in touch, and would be very happy to follow up with and continue the relationship.
Thank you very much. That's very, very generous of you. And again, I see a lot of clinical faculty on this call, so we'll give them an opportunity to reach out to me if there's any further information that they're looking for, or how the department can work with you to communicate to the various departments in our labs within our department. I don't see any other hands up for questions. So I would just like to very much thank you, John, Paul, and Andrea and Smruti, for coming and talking about your program. I thought that your educational programs and your pathway consultation courses really sounded quite exciting. And I'll reach out to you in the coming weeks to see how best to communicate to our faculty members about your different initiatives. So thank you once again, and thank you everybody for attending rounds today. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.